the TSA agents are not at their jobs. More than 300 of them have quit because they're not getting paid. And the reason why they're not getting paid is because the Department of Homeland Security is shut down. And the Department of Homeland Security is shut down because the budget wasn't funded by the Congress.
There's like 100 voters in that district that really determine the future. Only a point-something% of voters really matter. And like then we go, oh yeah, we have representation. So what kind of democracy is that?
And the media will never cover independents or third-party candidates. And then they'll say, see, they're not viable because we didn't cover them. And so they can't be on the debates because we didn't cover them to give them some name ID so voters could actually see who these are. And so when they're polled, if they're included in polls at all, no one knows who they are. So it all feeds into itself.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh man, Independent Voter Podcast is getting fun. Although Ethan has a flat tire, so it's just Cara, Shawn, and myself. Shawn's like midway through a cup of coffee. Cara's finished one. And despite me being the West Coaster, I'm like 3 deep now. But I don't know. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to try to run through it pretty quickly today. Cara, I think you have the rundown this week, right?
I do. I'm totally caffeine dependent though, and I did not have enough today, but I'm going to give it a whirl.
You're on the East Coast. It's like nighttime. It's like dinner time right now.
I know. I did get a workout in already, so that's cool. But let me tell you, like, I am addicted to caffeine and coffee. I can't function without it. So if there's anybody out there who wants to sponsor us from a coffee company, like I'm all in. And
well, I was watching Homeland though last night, and I don't know if you remember the episode when she's snorting caffeine. Yeah. Okay, that's
Claire Danes, that actress. She's amazing, isn't she? In that Homeland,
it's a very complex character. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, all the characters are. Who's the one? Mandy Patinkin? Is that who plays her boss at the CIA? I love that.
You got Saul.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
He's
Saul.
turned into a bad guy at this point where I'm at right now.
Don't be a spoiler. We're going to talk about spoilers in the show, like spoilers in
get
politics.
Sorry, Cara, go. I digress.
That's all right. We want to basically talk about spoilers a little bit, but the first thing we're going to talk about is that it might seem like it's not related to politics, but if you're trying to fly someplace right now, the TSA agents are not at their jobs. More than 300 of them have quit because they're not getting paid. And the reason why they're not getting paid is because the Department of Homeland Security is shut down, and the Department of Homeland Security is shut down because the budget wasn't funded by the Congress, and everybody's it's all because of the midterms. Maybe
does that mean we don't get our pat downs? I kind of like it.
Oh, brother. You don't have to take your shoes off anymore in TSA?
I thought it was an improvement that we don't have to take our shoes off anymore. So
yeah, that's cool. That should speed things up.
Except for, what I read about...
It should make it smell better, too.
But, the thing is about this is that, so, like, I had some family that was flying out of Houston. They were told to get to the airport 5 hours early because of this. We're so used to like an hour and a half, 2 hours getting to the airport early. Now it's 5 because of all this. So it's crazy.
So basically the government, everybody remembers what a government shutdown is, kind of like it's when the Congress cannot agree to a budget. And
isn't that a biweekly thing now?
It happens a lot more frequently than it used to. And it's a real symbol of the political dysfunction in America when the government, Congress people can't agree with one another to the extent that something should be funded or not funded. So the reason why the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the TSA agents and the airports, the reason why are not paying these TSA agents, and they have to go to work anyway, but they're not paying them because the government has not funded that part of the budget. They funded every other part of the budget, but not that part of the budget.
Whose fault is that? Let's get to the brass tacks. Whose fault?
So it's both. It's the fault of the system, Chad. It is not the fault of the Democrats or the fault of the Republicans. It's the fault of both of them to be able to come together and come up with a plan for dealing with ICE and for dealing with getting all the rest of the departments funded. So I think even FEMA is under the Department of Homeland Security. So there's all these people, they have to go to work, and every 2 weeks they are not getting their paycheck from the federal government. So, people who are TSA agents, they're not, you know, they're not super high paid, missing, they're there, they're serving our country, they work for our government, and they're not getting paid because everybody's trying in the Congress to extract, I think, like a political benefit from
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, I watch it. If you turn on Fox, the Democrats have held up this, right? If you turn on CNN or MSNBC, the Republicans are,
Right.
doing this, right? And you see the blame game go back and forth, right? So I don't know. I don't like. I
I
feel
heard
like
that there's a little bit of a solution that's sort of been put forward last night. I'm pretty sure Hakeem Jeffries.
nobody. He has solution. There's solutions. there?
Well, there's a solution, which is that he doesn't want to. They don't want to fund ICE. They want ICE. They think what happened in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, with Renee Nicole Good,
But isn't this just
and with Alex Preddy, is a symptom of an agency that is out of control.
Yeah, but isn't this like defund the police all over again? Like, didn't we already go down this route? Like, okay, there's some bad things that happen. Let's just not fund something that does other critical things.
Well, and I'm not entirely opposed to this idea of let's not approve additional funding, because let's face it, ICE has a lot of funding. They're still doing operations right now. They may be the only agency of the DHS where people are getting paid and things are happening because they still have a lot of money going on. So it's not like that ICE doesn't have funding. It's just maybe we slow down and hold up additional funding to ensure a little greater accountability within that agency.
Yeah. Well, I think people are like, oh, this show's not sensational enough, right? And the reason is because Shawn's so damn reasonable, and then he like breaks our ability to hyperbolize everything. So I'm
so sorry about that. If you want my take on it, I don't think necessarily that DHS should be abolished, but it should be broken up, because the Department of Homeland Security was founded after 9/11, and so now you have all these agencies under this one umbrella. You mentioned it before. You have FEMA, you have ICE, you have Customs and Border Enforcement. You have TSA, all these agencies under one umbrella. And if DHS doesn't get funded, none of these agencies get funded.
I mean, that's something that never gets in the conversation. Like it's relatively recent history that we had this organization, right? It wasn't until 9/11. I mean, for the young reviewers watching this, and they're like, oh, yes, there was a time when you just walked to the gate of the airport. And you didn't go through all this stuff, and it wasn't that long ago,
Yeah. Unfortunately, everything has changed, and our politics have gotten so bad that you've got 35,000 agents who work for the government who are trying to protect us at the airports, who are just doing their jobs, who are not getting paid, who cannot pay for their, for their groceries. They can't pay for their lives, their car payments, their rent payments, their house payments, their mortgages. And yet they're still expected to show up to work and smile and, and protect us at those airports. Meanwhile, we're at war too, spending $1 billion every single day.
We aren't at war. We're still trying to figure out where we're at.
I mean, again,
I keep hearing maybe the war is over. Like, I don't know what's going on anymore with this. Like,
well, it is fascinating because, like, you see a lot of folks, like, Hegseth calls himself a recovering neocon. I remember back in the Iraq, right? This was you had the libertarians and then the more liberal factions, the anti-war factions, kind of working together to do the anti-war. Oh, we shouldn't be going into Iraq. And I don't know, like, is it the same situation? Is it different? Like, I kind of have my, non-interventionist roots and stuff. And like, I don't know. I don't
Your
like.
last name is Peace.
I mean, I kind of try to live up to it, and like, but part of me, I don't know where I'm at on this. I feel like we don't even have enough information. But I mean, we haven't been very successful in the Middle East for a long time, and arguably we've created some of the turmoil. I know then you get attacked as anti-American for possibly suggesting that we had any kind of role in making things, even more unsafe out there. But it's just like a crazy situation right now.
Yeah, not
and
what we're
I
used
think
to
both
at all,
parties
right?
are really finding their messaging for their base. Like, going back to the ICE thing, when we just had primary elections here in Illinois on Tuesday. The days leading up to that if you were watching broadcast television, watching like the evening news, during the commercial break, every single spot was a political ad, mostly from Democrats saying, hey, when Trump brought ICE here, I was the one that stood up against them. I was the one that fought them. And so the Democrats have found their narrative on ICE. So that's why they're holding out funding. And then you have Trump on the other side saying, hey, I'm not going to sign another bill into law until you give me the SAVE Act. So does that also include the DHS funding? Is that like it's so is
I wonder
now
if it
the
does.
SAVE Act
A good
like
question.
part of that? Like
But this is a point, though. We connect it to reform. I mean, you got partisan primaries in Illinois. These candidates are not talking to the general electorate. Those ads are not for the general electorate. In fact, they're not even for voters who don't vote all the time in primaries, right? You have extraordinarily small turnout, and then it's super partisan. Independents are not allowed to vote, right? The Democratic Party in Illinois could change that overnight, but if they were small d Democratic, but they say, no, you can go ahead and pay for these primaries, but don't try to vote in them, right? Unless you join our party, which I argue there's a little First Amendment that should get in the way there. But my point being, we keep talking about why don't they take a reasonable stance like Shawn? Well, that doesn't like rally people up to get all mad and want to go to the polls, because all these consultants on both sides, they don't run campaigns of persuasion. They're not out there like, oh, maybe we can convince people that our side is right. Like, they run divide and conquer strategies, right? How do we get people off of their ass and out to the polls that we're 100% know are going to vote our way for our candidate?
And it's always for like the smallest base too that they're appealing to. Just as you were saying, here in Illinois, not only is it low turnout primary elections, but we also have plurality voting without runoff. So in my district, District 7, the winner of yesterday's primary won with 23% of the vote of an already low turnout.
So
primary.
so that's the 7th congressional district. Tell us
That's
about
the 7th.
So who won?
So let me see his name again, because I don't think that's the person I voted for. It's LaShawn Ford, and he is replacing outgoing Rep. Danny Davis, who's been in Congress for a while, but he's stepping away now. And so this was an open seat with 13 people running, because it's it is a guaranteed seat for Democrats, because it is in deep Chicago. So it's a very blue area, and so it's a shoo-in for Democrats. So of course it's going to attract a lot of candidates who want to get in that. So, and LaShawn Ford won with 23%. Second place person got 20%. Wow. And they don't have a runoff here. So what
was probably the votes in between them, right? Like 100.
It was
to
very
represent small. So really there's like 100 voters in that district that really determine the future, because the Democrats gonna win that race, right? And of a district of what, tens of thousands of people, right? So just crunch the numbers, like only a point something percent of voters really matter. And like, then we go, oh yeah, we have representation. So, what kind of democracy is that?
It's a great story about why we need, ranked choice voting. If you're going to close your primaries, at least the Democrats should have RCV so that somebody doesn't get elected with 23% of the vote. That
was the case for a lot of congressional districts here in Illinois, and even in the high-profile Senate race, Julian Stratton won with less than just barely under 40%.
So she didn't even crack 40%. That's for a United States Senate berth, basically, to run against the Republican in November.
And what is almost a guaranteed win for the Democrats.
Right. But let me point out, in California now, you can already see the murmurings and the chirping from the political class on the Democratic, more establishment side, because they're looking at the California governor's race and they're going, oh, well, the candidates that get out of this, you might end up with 2 Republicans, you might have it over that as an excuse. Because what they're not saying, oh, therefore, Cara, maybe we should have a top 4 system, or maybe we should use ranked choice voting. They're going, therefore, we should go do what they're doing in Illinois, right? Like, it's absurd. Like, they'll take this one, unintended consequence of a system, instead of saying, how can we improve that? Right? They go, oh, let's go back to just the really bad stuff. Let's do the same thing that Ken Paxton's doing in Texas, right? Exact same thing. Ken Paxton, who they say is like their arch enemy in the definition of what's wrong in politics, yet they play from the exact same campaign book, right?
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, should we explain to people what the spoiler effect is? Because I was thinking about it in the context of the California governor's race, Chad and Shawn. And, basically, there's so many Democrats running that there are spoilers for the Democrats, right? Because it's possible that 2 Republicans could get in, could be Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton instead of a Democrat. So the Democrats are sort of spoiling it for one
For
another.
each other.
Right?
Yeah, I mean
And-
that term comes out later. There's a guy named Erwin Noack who's kind of a legend in the Sacramento Capitol. I mean,
I've heard of him.
He'll recite chapter and verse of every single law. You go, oh, if we want to do this, what provisions do we need to think off the top of his head? You do it, right?
I love people like that.
Kind of called him Uncle Erwin growing up.
Nice.
Wonderful, like the most unique guy you'll ever meet. But he used to call this the masher basher, right? Whenever he did this, he'd go, oh, they're in the masher basher. And what he meant was the spoiler is like both of the sides, right, are threatened on a one-on-one race with this person. So they call us masher basher because they're in the middle and both sides just start punching them down, right? And convincing that they're voters that you really don't want that guy, even if you like him, because you're going to end up with something worse, right? And that's the spoiler.
That's it.
Right? That's the spoiler effect, right?
That's the spoiler effect.
Because you're a better candidate, both sides just pour all kinds of money and resources to getting people to fear using their vote to vote for you because something really bad will happen. And that sounds like conspiratorial, but it's not. It's literally the playbook. I mean, remember when we helped out Greg Orman a little bit when he ran for governor in Kansas. All the polling in a one-on-one race showed he'd win by like 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
Yet he ended up getting under 10% in the general election. Why? Because everybody was afraid to vote for him because the voters on the other sides were so convinced that voting for Greg would have got somebody worse.
Greg Orman is a great example of how, the parties hate the spoiler effect until they love it. Because in the Senate election before that, he ran against the incumbent there. And the Democrat was going to drop out. The Republicans tried everything they could to keep that Democrat on the ballot so that the spoiler effect would kick in and it would help their own candidate in that race. So it's you see this a lot in the system where the parties, they'll decry the spoiler effect, but then they'll benefit from it and they'll want, these additional candidates in there.
Yeah, if they really cared about the spoiler effect, then they would let ranked choice voting come into play in the general election because there's no spoilers with ranked choice voting. You can vote for the person you like the most.
New York calling New York, New York calling New York, right? I mean, that's the most recent example. Look, you had Cuomo and Trump calling Sleewall a spoiler, right? And why? Because New York reformed. Look, I'm the first person to say going from a pure closed primary to a traditional system to using the ranked choice, at least in the primary, is a step forward. But let's not kid ourselves. That was done in coordination with the establishment because they knew as long as they kept the ranked choice voting within a closed primary, a Democrat was going to win because in a general election, if there was any threat, because they have such a substantial majority, there would be spoilers in a plurality race that would guarantee a Democrat wins, right? That's just how the game works. Forget all the philosophy. That's how game works.
That's exactly how the game works. And so what made me think of it, I never really thought of California as having this problem because of top two, because it didn't seem like, but actually California does have this problem and needs to open up its system so that more people can participate and make it through to the general election and move from top 2 to top 4 or top 5, and to avoid this kind of spoiler thing happening. And what made me think of it is I was reading an article in the Los Angeles Times about Antonio Villaraigosa's campaign. He's the former mayor of Los Angeles. He is a longtime fixture in politics. And this article was basically about how poorly his campaign was doing. It had quotes from all these people saying he should just get out of the race. the whole campaign is not about his ideas. It's about, like, is he polling high enough now not to spoil the race he needs to get out of the race,
Okay.
right?
Can I get in a lot of trouble just with a lot of people by commenting on this?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, put this into perspective. And I don't even pick it on him. I know you love him, Cara, and everything, but
Who?
take Eric Swalwell,
I
right?
just have a
Who
crush on him, that's all.
Okay,
Like,
which,
actually,
by
my
the
crush has
way,
totally moved to Matt. I have even more of a crush on Matt Mahan right now, so.
okay, right. Well, see, this is the
He
problem.
wasn't in the race, but,
Yeah. But my point, listen, put this into perspective. First of all, Swalwell wouldn't even have been in Congress but for the top two nonpartisan primary. He won by challenging and forcing a runoff with another incumbent Democrat.
Stark, right?
Where under under the traditional system, he would have been out in the primary right? Then he goes to Washington, makes his name being like the resistance to Trump. Right? He's one of 400 and something congressmen, no executive background whatsoever, spending his life in dealing with Washington, D.C. issues. Now he comes back to California to run for governor, the top executive of the state. You don't get to be an activist when you're governor. You have to govern. Your job's to bring people together, right?
Chad, I can't believe it. Like, what is first of all, when he was in Washington, D.C., wasn't he he was working on California issues.
Federal
He
issues.
also ran for president. Remember, he ran for president, and he
failed.
Well, I mean, so did a lot of people, everybody except for Trump, right? That's why we have him again as our president, because everybody failed. But, he's definitely on the field. He definitely deserves to be able to run for governor. It's just that you should be able to maybe not rank him first, Chad, but you should be able to rank him, like
Agree.
third, fourth, fifth, and choose who your fave is.
Everybody should be able to run, and you shouldn't have spoiler effects on. That's my point. If you love and you have a crush on Swalwell and you want to vote for him, like, hey, if I wish I could vote him 0 because that's even better than 1, like, you should be able to think that and do that. My point was in the context of how our politics has become so name ID driven and not really focused on who's actually qualified for the job. In the context of Eric Swalwell versus Villaraigosa, take one person who's experienced and knows kind of the political landscape of California. I don't care if they're a Republican. I don't care if they're a Democrat. I don't care who it is. Tell them, okay, if you had to choose somebody ready to be governor of California tomorrow, not a single person is going to say Eric Swalwell is in a better position to be our governor than Antonio Villaraigosa. There's not a single person who's aware, understands the consequences of electing a governor that would say that. Yet, why does all the money line up behind Swalwell? Why do the consultants, why do people give their endorsements to Eric Swalwell when they know, when they're having private conversations, they don't really think he's ready to be governor? Because that's how the game works, and that's how we've been divided, and that's how the campaigns of turnout are run. So, like I said, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble, whatever.
Yeah, you can see, you can kind of see this mentality going into 2028 with Newsom, right? He's building his national name ID ahead of that presidential race because he knows that that's, in our political environment, what's more important is who has the bigger name ID.
That's what Prop 50 is about, right? A lot of people think that that's what Prop 50 is.
Well, he was able
to
build a national donor base based off Prop 50.
He offended every principle of small d democracy in doing it, right? And that's not even to pick on Newsom, because Republicans do the same thing, right? You can have two perspectives. He's running this. He's being Trump to battle Trump, right? He's basically, okay, I'll do the rhetoric type thing. But his campaign, the reason why they do it in the campaign isn't because he's right about everything he says. It isn't because he's being consistent about everything he says. It isn't because he's trying to demonstrate he has a different composure to be the type of president maybe that we've been used to in the past. He does it because people will know the name Gavin Newsom when it comes to presidential election time. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, name ID is, of course, the name of the game. The name of the game is name identification. So you can't like somebody if you don't know who they are. You're not going to vote for somebody if you don't know who they are. So the more people that know who you are, the better. And that's why you have people who are willing to do things that are even negative, because no ID is better than sort of almost bad name ID, right?
That's right. What's next? What's next? So did we
Well, we have
spoil the spoiler? I
$31
mean,
million in super PAC ads, so it's not even necessarily the Democrats and the Republicans that are driving this whole lovely ride that we're on in American politics right now. It's really the super PACs and the sort of the very wealthy people who are behind those super PACs who are kind of trading in political ads that support candidates. There was $31 million in super PAC ads spent, I guess, in Illinois.
Yeah, in Illinois, and I mean that's just super PAC. So that's independent expenditures. That's cash not associated or on paper not associated with any campaign, any like formal political action committee or party. So outside of that, though, there's even more money getting spent, and $21 million of that came from APAC, the Pro-Israel Political Action Committee. And the interesting thing about Illinois is you had all these stories come out about how you had super PACs that were forming behind the scenes other PACs to funnel money just so people wouldn't see the source of that money. So it's
Sure.
a bit crazy. And so
Yeah, you have all of them are called like
right.
Rainbows for America.
Right,
you know?
right. And so like, you know, it feeds into the conversation about the spoilers, because just this morning I was watching TikTok videos of progressives saying, "Hey, if all these other candidates were in the race, this well-funded candidate, the candidate who got all this money from APAC, would not have won, right? If all these other people were in the race." And when it comes to, at least from my take, you know, money in politics, to me, yeah. If you ask me if there's too much money in politics, I'm gonna say yeah. If you ask me if it's the biggest issue, the biggest systemic crisis of our elections, I'm going to say no, because you do see these instances where even like Julian Stratton, she was not the candidate who had the most PAC money behind her, and she won her primary. So, you know,
Didn't
there's
she
a
have
lot.
the governor behind her though?
She did, though. She had political capital. She may not have had the financial capital, but she had the political capital.
So since I
Yes.
stuck my neck out so that the establishment can chop it off, can I stick my neck out on this so that the reform community also chops it off?
Yeah.
Is
Go
that
for it.
acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. You're talking about more candidates, money becomes more powerful because you have more spoilers and all this stuff, right? I've been back and forth with the reform community over this, I don't know, for years, right? Everybody says ranked choice voting at all cost, right? I actually agree. If you want to go and put ranked choice voting and get rid of the primary, probably most of the time it's going to be substantially better than what we have,
You
right?
mean get rid of the primary altogether?
Altogether, right? So you could
Okay.
have, right? That's the problem. Why does Independent Voter Project, when I go to the board of the Independent Voter Project and say, hey, you know, can we invest in some supporting these folks who are trying to do this? They go, what you're going to do is what we've seen happen is that then the moneyed interest their game theory is going to be, let's pack the ballot. Let's get 17 people on the ballot. Let's maximize the ballot exhaustion. Let's force the media to cover only the people with money, because you can't cover 17 people. So you got to narrow the coverage, right? And those people, those spoilers, right? Then that are running because they represent the people and the community just get drowned out because they just say, oh, well, they're not credible. Oh, they're not credible. They're not going to get money. They're going to do this, right? It's a gamesmanship thing. But that's why, you know, I think you're right. We got to figure out how we narrow.
You like the
candidates.
top five is what you're saying, right?
Point,
I do. I do.
Yeah, to that point, and you're talking about how the more candidates that are in a field, the more impact that money has. That's also the case where if you have a closed system that limits who can participate, the less voters you have, the more impact that money has. So, and then we've made that case about closed primaries, is that when you have a closed partisan primary system, you know, that empowers moneyed interest more than anything else, because they'll have the most impact with their money. But if you have an open process, whether that is a nonpartisan primary system, or as you were just saying, Chad, get rid of the primary system altogether and just have a ranked choice voting election, then you have the most possible voters who could participate, and that's harder for that money to have that, you know, to go as far.
Yeah. And just if you think about this, those like you at home, you're thinking, what the heck is Shawn and Chad and them talking about? Think about it. You said, hey, I'm going to pay you to go educate these people so that we try to get them to go buy this product. Okay. Your first question would be, well, how many people need to buy this product? And you say, well, 10, right? Okay, I think I could probably do that. I don't know, maybe pay me a couple $1,000 and I'll go do that, right? Now say, okay, but no, to buy that product, you got to go and talk to 100 people. You're going to go and say, well, give me more money because now there's 100 people I need to go. That's all we're talking about, right? Closed primaries with low turnout are what the consultants and the moneyed interests want because there's less people you have to go out and talk to and convince. And beyond that, you already know what they kind of think because they're super partisan, right?
Yeah.
I
And
don't
then
know.
isn't that why you kind of wind up in November with what sometimes feels like candidates that don't appeal to most of us,
Burger
where you
King and
have candidates
McDonald's.
with like a combined 120% negative rating,
Burger
right?
King and McDonald's,
I mean,
right?
come on,
You know,
like we
healthy voters don't have a choice, but they're going to choose one. And then the media and the pollsters go, well, these people are really closet Democrats and Republicans because like you are going to have them starve unless they ate at McDonald's and Burger King and they chose to eat at McDonald's or Burger King and therefore now they're fast food eaters, right? It's like, no, that's not how it is. The problem, there's a lot more independence, which we see in Gallup. Like Gallup's showing, they go, okay, well, almost half the electorate says they're independent. Well, but they vote this way or that. Well, that's the only options you gave people, right? Like if you put actual options, you had ranked choice, you had opportunities for people to really challenge and have different viewpoints. Guess what? People would vote differently, right? If you put a salad there, some people would want the salad instead of a Big Mac.
Not if there's not ranked choice voting and they're afraid that they're never going to be able to have a hamburger again as long as they live,
Right.
if they pick the salad. So,
Yeah.
that's the worst part about spoilers, right? So you have a bunch of people trying to say these people should get out of the race. And then all this energy goes towards polling, like who's ahead, who's behind. That's what we're seeing in California right now. Steve Hilton, talk about somebody with no experience. I mean, sorry, Mr. Hilton, but
Well,
you know, you're probably not ready to be governor of California either. Chad Bianco, I don't know. Xavier Becerra, another one that's polling really low but has a ton of experience in California politics. Even I know who that is. Katie Porter, Matt Mahan, who really is the most experienced qualified person to be governor? And is it really about that, or is it about who's ahead in the polls, who's up, who's down, who should stay in, who should drop out, who's spoiling for who? These are conversations that all go away if you have ranked choice voting in the general election.
The reality is the political class is trying to pick winners, right? They have jobs tied to who they endorse and who they support and who they put their money behind, and that's going to determine their future after the election, right? And I'm not even saying that in a pejorative sense. Like that's just it's
This is
out of
how the game is
self-interest.
played.
They have kids in college. They have house payments. They have all this stuff. Oh, if I go get on that bandwagon, I'm basically not going to have a job next election because the people that do come into office and win aren't going to hire me for anything. They're not going to like me. Oh, they're not going to be my friend. And you know what? That's actually real. But so
it actually is real. I was reading a story today about Mahan in California Politico, and it was so designed to try to get this guy rattled and to get him out of the race. And the people who are quoted throughout the article are all people who've been quoted in California political articles for the last, 3 decades. And they're all saying things like, oh, he doesn't have a chance. Oh, he got in too late or whatever, designed. They have their own agendas, right? But there are these voices in politics that are so powerful.
Right. It's so funny that people will criticize us for publishing a piece that says that political insiders are trying to get people out of this governor's race. When you look at it, when you actually pay attention, and if you are paying attention to what's like these interviews are doing, what party insiders are saying, what political pundits are saying on the inside, the mechanisms are at work to try to get people out of this race. To alleviate the spoiler effect. So
that's not democracy. It shouldn't be about getting out of the race. It should be about who has the best idea, the best ideas, the most experience, that is ready to take on the job at day one, is ready to govern this practically ungovernable state. Not about all this jockeying, but this is how it really works.
On that point, I mean, one, I want to ask her: are you suggesting this is fake news coming out of Politico?
I'm not saying it's so I mean, let's like really look at it. the reason why I knew all the people who were quoted in the article, all trashing Mahan, is because these are the people who have shaped the narrative of California politics for decades. And they line up stories. I mean, this is how they're concerned, I think, that Mahan has so much support, particularly, I think, from Silicon Valley. I mean, that's his base, right? He's the mayor of San Jose. They see him as a problem, and so they're trying to snuff out his candidacy.
This goes back to an article we published a long time ago on IVN. It was a television producer out of Hawaii who said that we are the ones that decide which candidates are viable. The media decides it, right? So that is the mentality. That's why you have the media frame certain narratives a certain way. That's why you have pollsters ask questions a very specific way, because they're trying to frame the narrative,
Yes.
frame the questions, frame the campaigns and elections in a very
Absolutely.
specific way. So.
Absolutely. And they are very careful about it. And it's very poll driven for sure. And now the polls that get released and the timing of those polls getting released also plays a role. And you have polls that are done by the candidates in the races getting released. And of course, whoever paid for the poll, that candidate's numbers are higher than in a poll that
That's
is paid for by
coincidence.
another candidate. Meanwhile, it's the same electorate that's being polled, right? It's all about the weighting of those numbers and sort of what comes out the other side, and how whatever comes out the other side of the poll is designed to manipulate us into believing that if I don't vote for this person, I'm going to wind up with two Republicans. If this person doesn't drop out, I'm going to wind up with two Republicans.
And the media will never cover independents or third-party candidates, and and then they'll say, "See, they're not viable because we didn't cover them," and so they can't be on the debates because we didn't cover them to give them some name IDs so voters could actually see who these are. And so when they're polled, if they're included in polls at all, no one knows who they are. So it all feeds into itself.
Do we have some quick hits before we wrap it up?
Right. I think our only quick hit this week was we wanted to give a shout out to Paul Rykoff, who was on the Colbert Show. Mm-hmm. He's a veteran, and he was trying to get more veterans elected to the Congress, and he's totally hot on systemic reform. So shout out to him.
I think we have like 100,000 likes on a reel with him that we did with, right? That we posted with him. And then I don't know, is he coming on the show soon, or I don't know.
I think somebody's trying to get him on the show.
Yeah, I think Ethan's been talking to him because we collaborated on some stuff together. And that'll be cool.
But I think it is amazing to see someone like Reinkoff, who an Iraq veteran, someone who is experienced in veteran organizations, started this independent veteran group to encourage veterans to run for office, be on a show like Colbert, a national syndicated show like Colbert, and talk about how we need a system that doesn't force people to pick a side. Because half the country doesn't want to pick a side, including half of veterans. That's the one thing that often gets underlooked, and that's something that Colbert brought up, is that a lot of people, when they think about the military and they think about veterans, they think that this is a solely Republican group, when in fact they fall across the political spectrum. Half of them are independent of a political party.
So many
military
of them
are like the highest percentage of independent, which we can't get through this conversation without giving a shout out to our friends at Veterans for All Voters, and Todd and Eric and those guys who are doing like the Lord's work, getting veterans together to understand how our elections work and how we can do things better and get better leadership, because nobody knows more than somebody who's like, they've taken an oath to serve the country way over any political party, how dangerous it is to our country's, frankly, safety at the end of the day, to just be driven by two factions that are so at war with each other.
And
right?
This all ties back to, we see this with Iran and then the party conflict between that. We see this with ICE and the party conflict with that. Every 4 years, we have a different foreign policy. Every 4 years, we have it, because it keeps going back and forth between these two sides. So yeah, it's very much to that point. Yeah, it's dangerous to live in this hyperpolarized environment.
Well, I was going to say, we forgot to tell you to subscribe and push the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Come to Independent Voter News. We just released another How It Works series. We're working on doing another push poll, which, by the way, the last one was picked up by the New York Times and is in their California poll tracker. But
it's not a push poll.
No,
right?
no, we're gonna do a push poll not like for a candidate. We're gonna do a push poll putting the issues different candidates have been public on, and so it's
Okay.
informing them, and then saying, if you knew this, how would you vote? Right. So that's what I
Okay.
mean in terms of a push poll.
So I always thought a push poll was when you call up somebody and say, did you know that Chad Peace frequently sides, with the devil on the independent podcast.
Yeah. No, that is how a lot of push polls are done. Is
But
like
there's another kind of
in
push
order
poll
to
that you're
boost
telling
or
me, which
lower
is
somebody numbers. I'm saying, and maybe I shouldn't have said push poll. Is more like an informed poll. Like if you had a more informed electorate, where would the field be? Right, and asking them some questions. Right.
cool.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Like it's just a different kind of thing than I've heard of. That's going to be interesting. All right. Well, great to talk to you today.
We'll get together again in a week.
All
In the
right.
meantime, those of you listening at home, like I said, follow us, send us an email, send us an article. Right.
Write an article.
I mean, we're very proud and humbled by the growth on social, the growth everywhere of independent voter. We have a lot of big things coming. We're in development on some things, but thanks to all of you listening and sending us some kind words and support and hitting that subscribe button. So we'll see you next week, and thanks, Shawn and Cara. Hopefully Ethan's tire will get fixed by then.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by Olas Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
Olas Media.